Hello and welcome to today's content, which I will be talking about the new Guild War map and some units on their viability in the map. At the end of the video, since we theoretically have a raid coming up because of the FF14 collab, I'll briefly touch on that as well. I know I'm a little late to it, but as of January 6, 2021, the guild map has changed to Fortress. This means that the map effect is going to be missile attack up and accuracy up. So missile attackers will have a better opportunity of dealing more damage here, while evasion compositions will not have as much favorable matchups. So as you can see from the map itself, however, you can see that there are a lot of different tiles, such as different heights. So it's going to heavily favor units that have high mobility, such as move 4 or jump 2 or something of a mix of those. So that means that abilities that have flexible range height will also be able to utilize the map properly, which will help you and be very beneficial to you to knowing that, since abilities with poor range height or not as good range will struggle to set up properly on this map. Specifically for Guild Wars slot 1 through 3, on this map specifically, slot 1 is going to be one of the most important roles since it spawns up here for slot 1. Which means that they have one of the most height advantages here, or if they got high mobility, they can also sneak into enemy backline almost immediately through going down here. So units like Venera, Ramza, Kane, Victora, they all have really good mobility. They could just run across through here pretty easily and get to the other side. This means that all other units will tunnel through the midsection if they don't have the mobility pass. And that's where most of the damage will be happening. So the middle pass is going to be right around here. Most units will be tunneling through here. They'll go down from the stairs here and meet with the other team around here. This means that role 1, slot 1 is going to be pretty important in how much they can control basically the upper part. If it's a missile user, they want to be on the upper part so they have good range advantage down on the people here and won't be able to get targeted as easily. However, as I said, if they have a high mobility unit and they sneak over to the other side, they can easily just snipe the backline. So it depends how you want to set up your guild war. So moving on to the DPS units and their viability, I'll go over the possible missile DPS units first. To save time, I'll also only go over the UR units and DPS units in general, since support and tank units and MR units can all vary immensely in terms of usability, such as Mustadio, but for now I'll be focusing on the UR units here. Additionally, while this is mostly in my perspective, it is also to my understanding in terms of effective range, as I have up here, and their effective damage, instead of completely min-maxing possibilities that might ruin one side's utility or their usability by going through only min-maxes. So this is looking at a more realistic take on it, in my opinion. To start off, I'll talk about the two units with the most range, which is Frederica and Nivlu. If they were to use their ranged passives and use their barrage or LB limit break, depending on who it is, they have the most range out of the missile units here. So while Rika does have one of the highest ranges in the game, and also in this scenario, her damage is lacking compared to other ranged counterparts all here, because she does not have access to defense piercing abilities, and her damage itself, the stat, is not as high compared to the other gunners and missile users. So that's why she does have max range, which is good, and she can just barrage spam if she has bells on, but regardless, the raw damage itself will be lacking compared to others. Nivlu, on the other hand, while she is also identical to Rika, as in she is not super strong on the DPS side, since she's more in the middle, more balanced, I guess, consistent damage, acceptable chip damage. Her innate defense penetration helps her topple over Frederica's damage, and her utility itself is what shines, but I won't be explaining that here specifically. So going down to the range 10 units here, the next tiered range would be 10, which is Xmas Meshuri and Luartha. Since Xmas Meshuri has access to Barrage and Ranger lore, she's able to get up to 10 range, and while her damage is better than the other previous units I've stated earlier, which was Nivlu and Frederica, she has the mono fire type ability, master ability as well, and the 10% defense penetration. It lets her damage be better than those two, but it's not enough to topple over the other missile users that I will be talking about later. So that's where Ex Mashuri like stands currently. However, Luartha, she's able to get the same range of 10 with her arm shot and concentrate on passive. However, she also has access to both the defense penetration passive, which is tune up, or self-sacrifice if she wants to use concentrate as well for her range. And because she already has a very high base attack and attack stat in general compared to all the other units here, she's able to abuse that attack stat while still using concentrate. On to the next tier of range is 9. Range of 9. So we'll start with Rosa. So while Rosa doesn't boast any defense penetration or high base attack, she's still able to come out on top compared to Frederica's single target damage because her own passive innately also gives her range as well as 20 human killer. While Rika's master ability gives her 15, 20 is more than 15 and they have almost similar attack stats as well, so Rosa definitely comes out on top. However, why I show on the graph she's a little bit even more than Rika, not by like a lot, but it's still relevant enough to be almost a Niv lose, is specifically because of her Ice Crystal Arrow, which is an Ice Imperil for 38% for Ice, which is boosting her damage even more, which is very nice. She does, however, like Frederica, lack defense penetration as I stated, as well as any medium or high damaging AoE abilities, so she is also behind Niv Lu in the end. So next up is Lucia. Lucia is one of the few missile attackers that has access to the 40% defense penetration to help boost her damage immensely against most of the tanks and bruisers we have in our meta. Sadly, she doesn't have Barrage, however, so her range passive, even with her range passive up, at max she will only ever hit 9 range. However, we do have to take note that her damage is significantly better than the other missile users because of her stats and defense penetration, as well as specifically against earth units, she will have a very good advantage because of her master ability on them too. Also, her stats allow her to deal as much damage, more than all the other previous missile users, except for Luartha, because Luartha's kit is just way more offensive. So Lucia is at 9 range. She does good damage, but she's not at the top either. For the last of the possible missile DPSs here, we have Venera. Venera's range, however, comes mostly from her move and jumps, which allows her to reach up to close to 9 range with most of her abilities. Along with her high total attack in her stat board, she also has access to the tune-up passes for the 40% defense penetration, so it further cements her damage being above Lucia's, as well as being better than everyone's except for Luartha's. This coupled with her stats and mobility, she's able to move around the map really well while having access to her dual gunner abilities in this scenario, so she can make use of the missile and she can make use of the map, so she's just a very good viability of a unit here for her missile DPS. But not only her missile DPS, as she can still run up through the side and use her other abilities as well, but specifically for missile, she has the mobility for it and has the damage. Next up, here are some of the sample DPS units that are not missile, or not missile type damage. As you can see, I purposely left out some units here such as Glaciella, since she is deathly weak to missile attacks despite her range and good damage on this map, so please don't think that like other DPSs that I might have not like shown here are not viable. It's simply from my perspective that for the goal of this graph is to show you how units have more easily usability on this map, instead of having to very harshly try to bring up their resistances without much benefit, or they're investing too much and you're not getting much out of it. So mostly for this, since there's so many units here, I'll mostly just talk about the top 2 for the range and damage, so that'll just cut off some time and help show a general sense of the graph. Anyways, to get started, we'll go with the number 1 unit for range, which has pretty good damage as well, being Halloween Leela. Halloween Leela is able to boast a 10 range with her Arioga level 3 or 4, which also has very good range height, so it makes her more easily able to target enemies despite their height differences. So it makes her viability in this map very useful, as well as having the high mobility, so she's flexible as well in how she can maneuver around the map. Moving on to the next possible highest range is Ramza. Ramza with the Shikuchi and Taunting Spell, he's able to reach 9 range comfortably. Also with the range height on a Taunting Spell, it's decently good range. However, if he did use a double movement passive, he can reach 10 range. But because he'd be lacking a little bit in one resistance or like one utility in that passive, I'll say his average is more 9 instead of 10. Because using a double movement passive maybe could be good here, but I feel like missing out on the Shadowrunner passive or the magic and dark resistance passive might be a mistake. So that's why his more realistic range would be 9 around here. Also, unfortunately for Ramza, his base damage is not really high enough to be considered a hard hitter compared to all the other DPS on this list. So he's staying close to like the left bottom half of the damage ratio portion wise, because he simply just lacks enough damage to be a big DPS unit. It's also similar to Halloween Leela as well, in both that she and Ramza lack any type of penetration type of benefits and will be outshined by other types of DPS. Specifically for Ramza, since he doesn't have any defense penetration or spirit penetration, he lacks both of those, as well as his base damage not being the highest. He will be lacking compared to others. Halloween Leela at least has access to the Soul of Thasma, which helps her a little bit, but because she doesn't have any spirit penetration, she won't be as high as like her other counterpart like Ildria, where Ildria also has higher magic total over Halloween Leela, so that's why they're placed where they are. So, moving on to the top 2 damage dealers, as we see over here, obviously will be Kain and Runestern. There's not enough competition to like take them down from their positions, but first off, Kain has a range of 7 give or take, and you might seem like, oh, 7, that's actually not that great. But the biggest takeaway is that he has 4 jump for his mobility, as well as the good range height on his abilities, that he can also hit him from up high and it still hits them from down low because he's a spear user. So this is why he's posted for like at least a decent range compared to other units because of that specifically. This map also, like I said earlier, the range height is really needed to be flexible to get the right abilities out. So Kain's kit on this map is able to not only output damage, and he has defense penetration as well, but his abilities allow it to be easily played out without having to set up too much because it has good range height, basically. His damage, since he's not all the way at the edge, I put that specifically because he has insanely good damage and he has defense penetration, but it's not to Runestern's tier. Runestern is just, he has his own tier. Regardless, since I was just talking about Runestern, we'll also go to him since he is the #1 damage dealer in the game. He has a range of 8 due to Hazard Crusher and both Mighty Break. Hazard Crusher, however, has a very effective height range. That's why I put him at, it's not above the range you want it to be at, but because it has a very good effective height range, which allows him to hit almost all units that are in the length range of his ability for Hazard Crusher, I put him in his spot right here because if they are within the length range, they have a high chance of being hit because of the range height as well. So it is a very, very good ability here. Also, because he boasts literally almost one of the highest base damages in the game, as well as innate defense penetration, coupled with this defense down debuff, he's literally able to kill many opponents in one hit if they are not properly mitigating against him. So it's important to have some type of mitigation against them or kill him before he can reach you in this map specifically. I hope this gives a decent understanding of how some of the units stand in this Guild War map specifically, or at least in the general sense of the units in the graph. But I hope you can understand that this map specifically, while it does favor missile users, it does not mean they are the only viable users or the only ones that could benefit on this map. Since there's no mitigation compared to the snowy mountains, that means people will be taking more damage, meaning mitigation might be nice to have, but there will be a lot more damage being taken in general. So it's important to know how to plan around that specifically. So before I end this video, global version of War of the Visions is expected to have a raid, but will highly likely be the FF14 one. But the Siren raid also has a possibility of coming out as well because Niv Lu has come out, but it's highly expected for the FF14 raid to come first before the Siren raid. So if you're a raider, I hope like you can prepare. If you watch this, just make sure that you're prepared for the raid that's coming out, because it's good to farm the equip as much as people don't like raids the equip is still a very good gap closer to stay relevant basically in the game. Last of all, I plan to showcase some like Guild War matches and comparisons of my guild to analyze and show some Guild War action, so I hope you all will enjoy that in the future when I start releasing those. And anyways, thanks for watching, and if you happen to like the video, please comment, like, and subscribe. And with that, until next time, peace out.